A bank manager made a black CEO wait 2 hours. What happened next left everyone stunned. Before we jump into the story, drop your city or country in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. The heavy glass doors of a downtown bank opened wide as Jonathan Mitchell walked in with confidence. The soft tap of his polished shoes echoed on the marble floor. His sharp, navy blue suit, shiny watch, and smooth leather briefcase all showed he was a man of success. For Jonathan, this was just another step in expanding his tech company, a business he had built from the ground up. But the bank staff didn't see a CEO, they only saw a black man in a suit. Jonathan was asked to sit in a plain, uncomfortable chair near the front. He noticed the receptionist typing away, not even glancing at him. Minutes passed, then 15, then 30. Soon an hour had gone by. Other customers, some in jeans, others with shopping bags or old jackets, were helped right away. But Jonathan remained unnoticed. He stayed calm on the outside, telling himself the bank was probably just busy, but inside he felt a tight knot forming in his chest. 2 hours later, the branch manager finally showed up. Without much of a look, he said, "We don't usually handle accounts like yours here." It sounded polite, but the message was clear. You don't belong. What happened next would shake everyone in that bank. It would force them to rethink what they believed about success, race, and respect. Jonathan Mitchell knew what it was like to face unfair treatment. He grew up in a tough neighborhood and learned early on what it felt like to be underestimated, but he never let other people's opinions define him. At 38, he was the CEO of Innovate Solutions, a fast-growing tech company known for its advanced software and work in the community. Just a year earlier, his company signed a major deal with a Fortune 500 firm, putting his business on the map. With that success came the need for a strong banking partner to manage his growing finances. After doing his homework, Jonathan picked Sterling Bank, famous for working with top-level businesses. That Monday morning, dressed for business and focused on his goals, he arrived early to open a new corporate account. The bank was busy, with tellers helping customers and managers in meetings behind glass doors. Jonathan walked up to the front desk and said, "Good morning. I'm Jonathan Mitchell. I'm here to open a corporate account for Innovate Solutions." The young receptionist, Lisa, nodded without fully looking at him. "Please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." So he sat by the window, watching the activity around him as time slowly ticked by. He could see that customers who looked less formal were called up right away, greeted with smiles and handshakes, but no one came for him. After 20 minutes, Jonathan stood and walked back to the desk. "Excuse me," he said, "is there an estimated wait time?" Lisa glanced up and forced a polite smile. "We're a bit busy this morning. Someone will be right with you." Jonathan returned to his seat, telling himself to stay patient. He vowed to call ahead next time. 30 minutes passed, then an hour. His phone buzzed with reminders of meetings and calls he still had to make, but he stayed put, trying to ignore his growing discomfort. Around him, people from all walks of life were helped quickly. He noticed some employees casting curious, or maybe judgmental, glances his way. A former colleague had once warned him about hidden biases in corporate settings, but Jonathan had hoped things were changing. Today proved otherwise. Finally, after 2 full hours, Lisa gestured toward a side door. "Mr. Mitchell, the branch manager will see you now." Jonathan stood, his muscles tense, but his face calm. Mark Reynolds, the branch manager, was the kind of man who believed a polished look meant real success. He'd worked at Sterling Bank for over 15 years and took pride in its elite image, but he had little experience with someone like Jonathan. In Mark's office, the air felt thick. Mark glanced over Jonathan's papers before asking abruptly, "What exactly do you need?" "A corporate account for Innovate Solutions," Jonathan answered. He laid out the company's size, their recent Fortune 500 contract, and the scale of their finances. Mark leaned back, arms folded, eyes doubtful. "Usually, companies of this size go through our corporate relations team. I'm surprised no one contacted you first." Jonathan met his gaze. I handle my own banking. I prefer talking directly with the branch. Mark nodded, though his face stayed guarded. He flipped through Jonathan's registration papers, tax documents, contracts, and financial statements. After a few minutes, Mark looked up in real surprise. "Your company is impressive," he admitted. "I didn't realize," Jonathan interrupted softly. "I understand assumptions are easy to make, but my appearance doesn't show my achievements." Mark shifted uncomfortably. "I apologize for the wait earlier. That shouldn't have happened." Jonathan's tone stayed steady but firm. "It's not just about the wait. It's about how people judge me before they see my work." Mark let out a slow breath. "You're right. We need to do better." As they spoke, Mark's assistant entered with coffee and paperwork. Jonathan noticed he was the only client that morning who hadn't been offered a drink. Mark then arranged a meeting with the bank's regional director to discuss introducing diversity training. Outside the office, quiet chatter began. Word spread quickly. The man who had been waiting for hours was actually a well-known CEO. The experience had been uncomfortable for Jonathan, but he saw it as a chance to bring change. He took a moment to speak with Lisa, the receptionist. He gently explained how unconscious bias can affect people without them even realizing it. Lisa admitted she had never really considered how her actions might come across. Jonathan suggested the bank create awareness programs to help employees recognize and address such behavior. 2 days later, the bank held a full staff meeting led by Regional Director Susan Lee. Employees from every department filled the room. Susan didn't shy away from the issue. "We let a client down," she said, "a client who deserved respect and fair treatment. What happened made us realize there's a deeper issue here." Jonathan was invited to speak. Standing before the staff, he shared his experience, not just the 2-hour wait, but the many times people had judged him before seeing who he really was. His voice was calm and steady. Discrimination doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's quiet, hard to notice. But it's still just as harmful. We must learn to see it, talk about it, and stop it. The room fell silent. Then, slowly, applause broke out. Faces turned toward one another with a new understanding. Susan announced the rollout of new diversity and inclusion programs, required training for all staff and open forums where employees could share their stories without fear. Jonathan's bravery had sparked real change. The bank committed to fairer, more respectful service for every client, no matter their race or background. Months later, Sterling Bank had evolved. The diversity training sessions had changed many perspectives. Employees opened up about their biases and talked about how they planned to grow. Lisa, the receptionist, became a vocal supporter of inclusivity. She greeted every client with warmth and care. Mark Reynolds, the branch manager, admitted his missteps in a company meeting and promised to mentor his team on unconscious bias. Jonathan continued to work with the bank, helping design workshops that used true stories to teach valuable lessons. The bank even launched a program to support minority-owned businesses. Jonathan's business kept thriving, expanding into new areas and partnering with organizations that valued equality. The story of that day became more than just a personal memory. It became a case study shared in business schools, conferences, and leadership sessions. It wasn't just about a black CEO left waiting, it was about the strength to speak out and create change. Jonathan often looked back on that afternoon. What started as frustration had turned into something powerful. He knew others still faced unfair treatment, but his story proved that things can change when people are willing to listen and take action. The bank, once blind to its own biases, had become a symbol of progress. And Jonathan? He was more than a successful entrepreneur. He was a bridge builder and a leader in change.